I finally figured out why engineers are so weird. We spend all our time thinking about these niche problems that most people would just find super trivial. A buddy of mine spent a summer working at Ford, and his only job the whole time he was there was to get rid of these little bubbles that were forming on the inside of the door panel of the 2015 to 2016 Mustang. That's it. That's all he did. And now, anytime someone asks him about it, he runs up to his car, he pulls the door open, he points the little bubble, and he goes, "You guys, I fixed that." He had so much fun telling people about it that he went out and bought one. I think this sort of enthusiasm can be kind of off-putting for people, and to be honest, I kind of get it. But I think as long as you're being genuinely emotionally present with people, and you guys, oh my gosh, check it out. I just finished the gauge cluster for the Boxster. You guys have to come see this. So there's two reasons I wanted to make a custom cluster. First is the color. I recently redesigned this interior to use all these bright pastel colors, so I'm starting with the gauge cluster. Second, I think I can make it a lot more minimalist. The Porsche one's actually already pretty simple, but there is some room for improvement. First, there's both a digital and an analog speedometer, so I'm just going to get rid of all the tick marks on the analog speedo. On the tach, the temperature gauge, and the fuel gauge, I'm going to use one tick mark each. I'll keep one tick for red line, one for overheating, and one for low fuel. That's it. First, I had to figure out how to match the shape of the old gauge faces. This should have been really easy. I just wanted to take the old face and throw it in a scanner. The problem is the old faces are glued down to the bezel, and I was super worried that when I pulled them up, I was going to damage them. So instead, I took a picture, I traced that out in Figma, and then I cut out the design by hand, and I just compared that to the old gauge face. The problem is the camera distorts the image a little bit, so I actually had to keep going back and making tweaks and then cutting them out by hand. This took me like 2 whole days, but you know, sometimes this is how it goes. Not all the work's gonna be super glamorous, sometimes you just have to get it done. Except later on I had to remove the gauge faces anyway, and they were totally fine. I totally could have just put them in a scanner. You hate to see it. But with that done, I was ready to move on to the backlighting. Now, there's basically 2 challenges. First, you want to make sure the backlighting is really even. Whether it's the tick marks or the individual indicators, you want to avoid having these hot spots near the individual bulbs. And then second, you want the edges of the translucent sections to be really crisp when they're backlit. The effort someone went through to make this was crazy. There's this plastic piece that pipes in the light from all the individual bulbs, and then there's these frosted sections that cause the light to distribute more evenly before it goes through all the individual tick marks. And the gauge face itself is built up in several layers. There's a mostly opaque layer sitting on the outside, but then on the back there's translucent prints for the turn signal indicators and high beams. There's even these little dimples printed on the back of the translucent sections to keep the light distributed just a little bit more evenly. And then finally, there's these little black masks printed around all the translucent sections to keep them really crisp when they're backlit. All this just to keep some numbers and tick marks cleanly lit. Crazy. The good news is I can actually reuse the bezel. I just needed to make new faces. I decided to make them out of a sheet of acrylic with a layer of vinyl on either side. The colored gauge face would go on the front side, and the translucent sections and the light mask go on the back. I tried printing the design onto some transparent vinyl transfer paper, but I ran into a couple problems. First, you can't print pastel colors like this on transparent paper. At-home printers don't have white ink. The bigger issue though was this seemed to be causing issues for my printer. After a handful of sheets came out with these ripples on them, and then I printed another sheet of regular paper and that had ripples on it, I decided to stop before destroying my printer. So then I bought a vinyl cutter and just cut the pattern out of colored sheets instead. This worked eventually, but it was really finicky. The hardest part was lining up the vinyl sheet with the acrylic while laying it down flat enough to avoid forming all these little bubbles. This went a lot better once I started using a heat gun, but even so, I was only able to get this to work like 1 in 3 tries. To make the translucent indicator lights, I decided to roll the dice with the printer a couple more times. I printed out these different colored translucent sections for all the different indicators, and then I laid them on the back face of the acrylic. To make the tick marks really crisp, I cut out these little rings and put them right around each of the translucent sections. Then I laid on another mask with cutouts just smaller than the outer diameter of the rings. The first time I did this, I tried laying the mask down in a single sheet. Splitting it into a few pieces made it much easier to align everything. And with that, it was ready to go in the car. Oh, these are so cool! But there are a few problems. For one, the tick marks aren't perfectly circular. I don't know if I just had a dull blade on the vinyl cutter or if this is just a limitation of trying to make small holes like this. I also noticed that the turn signal indicators were getting just slightly lit up when I turned on the backlight. On the stock assembly, the face is glued down to this window to prevent light from bleeding through the edges. I thought about gluing this down, I even bought some epoxy, but I decided it looks okay. And plus, you'd never mistake it for the turn signals actually being on. The last thing is, these are looking pretty out of place. Until I start making some progress on the rest of the interior, these are gonna look kinda ridiculous. But in the meantime, whenever someone asks me about it, I can tell them all about early 2000s Porsche gauge cluster backlighting. And they'll smile politely as they wonder why engineers are all so weird. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you guys next time.